Hey, and welcome to the podcast. I'm your host, Natasha Golinsky. So excited to have you here. If you are new to the podcast, Never Launch on a Friday is all about working with female agency owners, helping them bring out more brilliance, shine even brighter through healing trauma. My whole premise of Never Launch on a Friday is that you can only grow to the extent your nervous system lets you grow. And so that being said, is how do we expand that nervous system? How do we expand that edge? And so if we want to grow, we need to heal because these edges are what keeps us where we are. This is obviously what, they call our zone of comfort, right? Our comfort zone. And getting outside of that, going bigger, having new problems, and the stress of the expansion or the stress of the next step is what keeps us where we are. And so my passion, my life work is about helping amazing women heal what's keeping us stuck here. And I don't know, it seems like sort of morbid, but I love learning about trauma. I love talking about trauma. I love healing trauma in myself. I love seeing it in my clients. I just love that expansion of, wait a second, I don't have to think like that anymore. I can heal that. I can reframe that. I can learn some new skills. I can learn how to handle feeling stressed out. And we become better at managing stress, and slowly, slowly we expand our comfort zone. And so inside of that comfort zone, now we have more of the things that we want. But getting past it and getting past those edges is what I adore. I love talking about that. Female entrepreneur my entire life, and I know what it feels like to be juggling a million balls and have crisis and have personal issues and health issues and trying to keep it all moving. And I completely understand where you're at. And today I want to talk a little bit about how I feel we negate our trauma. I was talking to a friend of mine last week, and she was sharing with me some struggles she's having in her business. And she was telling me about these problems. And she said, but it's not real problems. It's not, we're not going bankrupt. We haven't had any sort of lawsuits, but she was having this struggle and she was like in a lot of discomfort and a lot of pain talking about this problem. And about 5 minutes before she said that, I was talking about my cancer journey. And if you've listened to the podcast, I had breast cancer in 2024, 2025, went through all my treatment, bilateral mastectomy, reconstruction, chemo, all the follow-up, some follow-up surgery, and basically went through 17 months of treatment for breast cancer. And I would always catch myself saying, well, it's great. I'm feeling better. It's so good. I didn't die. And I say all these things, all these morbid things, and it completely negates how painful it was and how traumatic it was and how awful the experience was. Okay, yeah, I'm not dead. Yeah, it could be worse. But what about now? What about us? What about where we are? And my friend and I were having this conversation. And it's kind of like this whole expression of first world problems, right? We say this in first world problems. And I know what that means because I have lived in third world countries. I spent, better part of a year living in ghettos and building schools in Mexico. And I know what it is to be in communities where there is no water. And you have to wait for the water truck guy to come, and there's people sniffing spray paint, and like I've lived and worked in these communities where there's no bathrooms, and then here we are in our first world feeling mad that we're having problems in our business about something that seems so comparatively insignificant. And I just want to talk today about that because I really truly believe that when we negate our pain, it invalidates the struggle that we have because we're comparing. But I'm the first one to say to myself, don't be a baby, don't be so weak, don't be so pathetic. Just get over it. Like that's been my self-talk as an athlete, as a mom, as an entrepreneur, that sense of putting yourself down based on what you're going through because it's not as bad as someone else. And it can always be worse, always. But does that mean that where you are and what you're struggling with is not valid? It's not pain? And I know how I feel about this. I feel very princess mode. I feel like, who am I to complain that I'm still having problems after the chemo, and when some of the people that I was in chemo with are probably dead? Like, who am I to complain about the migraines and the hormone problems? And who am I to complain about the fallout of all this chemo when I'm not dead? And it's like, and I hear myself say that, and it makes me feel so small about problems that are very, very real to me. I'm still seeing doctors. I'm still not sleeping well. I'm still having all this fallout. Does that mean that this is not important? Does that mean like I should just forget it and negate it and not look at it and not treat it and not get support for what I need where I'm at? And like I said, I am the first one to get on the struggle bus. I am the first one to be like, if it doesn't hurt, you're not doing it right. And I'm the first one to be like, get up, don't cry. That has been me. But does that work? Does that heal us? Does invalidating your pain help you? And it doesn't. And so what I want to do today is give you permission to own that you are in pain. We talk about trauma. And I know I do a lot of studying every day about trauma. And there's like big T trauma, little t trauma. This is just the expression that we use, right? Little t, big T. Big T trauma, let's say an example of you have been gang raped, you've been a child soldier, you've been in a major fire, you lost your family, whatever it is. Big T trauma, little t trauma, maybe you were like, laughed at school because you had the wrong answer. Your little t by someone's spectrum could be your big T. Maybe when you were little and you got called in a class and they laughed at you, that set the tone for your life. Like you now never speak out loud, you never join meetings, you never say anything. Trauma is completely on a spectrum. And the big T things for someone could be seen as little t things for some people could see as big T. There is no answer about what trauma is. It's not, okay, my dad yelled at me a lot when I was little. That's not, that's not a big deal. But if it affected you and it has helped, like it has negatively impacted your life as growing up, that is trauma. And to heal, we need to acknowledge that something is real. We need to acknowledge that it exists. And I really do believe that all the times in my life, and probably all the times in your life, if you're a high achiever, when you like push it down and you push down the pain and you like train on a broken leg, as it were, I really do believe that that does so much harm. And coming from a high achieving person who hates excuses, and I want to tell you, you are allowed to feel stuck, feel hurt, feel sad, feel angry, feel that your problem matters, and not compare it. That isn't big T, little t, or a big T trauma. You're allowed to accept that this hurts me. This is painful, and just forget about what else it could be. Right? Because if we don't own our pain, and if we don't own our trauma, and own where we are, and own our blocks, and we are just hearing these voices of like, don't be such a princess, whatever, and we stuff it down and we ignore it, there is no healing. So one of the things that I've learned in trauma training or helping people handle trauma is the circle of trauma like works in a circle, for example. So let's just say that I had breast cancer, and and I'm healing and the grief and all of that. But if I don't complete the cycle of grief, of processing, that trauma will constantly be running in my life. So if that trauma healing process gets interrupted by me constantly saying to myself, don't be such a baby, grow up, grow the fuck up. You're not dead. You're just, it doesn't matter. You're so, cancer has a 95% survival rate. Be grateful you didn't get pancreatic cancer. And I say these things to myself. There's no healing there. I'm like shortcutting. That's not the word. I'm like blocking the trauma healing. And so if you're in your business and there's something that's driving you crazy and you just negate the pain, there's no healing and completion and growth. So for example, I was talking to my friend and she was having the struggle with something in her business, and we were talking about solutions and how can we move through this and how can we heal and how can we own this? How can we accept that, yes, this is real. It is real. Like you might think it's small. You might think it's so small and not even worthy of attention. But if it's something that hurts you, let's look at that. Right? Because I know for me, I grew up with a bipolar parent. I wasn't abused in the sense of physically abused or sexually abused. There was no thing like that. But I grew up with a parent who was bipolar, and it was up and it was down, and it was nice and it was danger, and it was yelling, and then it was being kind. And that, living with that for 20 years, it messed up my nervous system for sure. And I could say to people, it doesn't matter. I was never abused. It's just, oh, my dad was bipolar, blah, blah, blah. Not acknowledging, no, this is a big deal. We need to look at this. This has impacted you. And so Today, I'm giving you permission. Forget what it could be. Take out of your mind first world problems. You're allowed to admit that where you are hurts. And if you're like me and you're continuously stuffing it down and forget about it, it's not important, it's not a big deal, it doesn't matter, this is so irrelevant, this is so stupid, that trauma is still there. That's the part that we don't think about. Something that hurts and we push it down. We don't push it out, we push it down. It's in our system. That angst and tension and frustration, it's still there. It just doesn't go anywhere. And so one thing that we talk about in somatic and somatic healing is okay, where in your body is this pain? Where is this? This morning I was in my journal, and my journal for me is talking to my AI buddy, and I was talking about a block that I have. And to me, it felt so silly. I was talking oh, there's this thing in my business I really struggle to do, and it seems so stupid and whatever. And we started digging into it. And it came, my fear of taking action in my business in a certain capacity today runs back to an incident that happened 15 years ago. And this, A, is because of B. The trauma or the response, the action I live with today and the fears that I have today is because of something that happened 15 years ago. And so we went back, me and my AI buddy went back, and we started talking about this incident. Okay, what was this? Why does this hurt so much? What did you learn from this? Who did you identify? Who did you think you became because of this incident? Where is the shame here? And we started looking at this situation and how awful excuse me, how awful an experience it was. And I began to kind of take it apart, and I began to feel the sickness. I physically felt sick having this conversation about what I did and how it was before. And we started to dismantle the source of what I felt was so small and so dumb. And in 10 minutes, I had clarity on why does this bother me? And now it's kind of gone. It's kind of disintegrated. It's okay, I get it. I feel okay. I feel liberated from this little thing. Because probably your action step to manage discomfort is to dismiss it, pretend it's not there, pretend it doesn't matter, go into warrior mode, and just feel bad for feeling bad. So this week, I want to challenge you. Forget about the relative pain of your problem, where you stand on the spectrum of big T, little t. Forget it. Are you in pain? Does this bother you? Yes, that's enough. Forget it. Forget if it's big or if it's small. Does it bother you? Yes. Is it something that blocks you? Yes. Is it something that causes you pain? Yes. Okay, it's real. Let's look at it. Let's talk about it. And you'll notice that as you start to show that level of self-love, that you are giving yourself the grace that, yes, this is hard. This is pain. I know for me with my breast cancer journey, I'll make jokes about it. I make jokes and I'm like, oh, hey, I always wanted a free boob job. And I joke about, having had a bilateral mastectomy and a reconstruction. And then, I joke about hey, at least I know what I look like now with no hair. It's not too bad. I have a nice head. And I make these jokes about the chemo and the surgery. And it helps other people feel more comfortable that they don't really, sometimes they don't know what to say when they meet me, right? So I try to diffuse the situation. But there's so many times that I don't give myself the space to feel how hard it was and how hard it is, and experiences of survivor guilt and all the things that come with it because I didn't die. And that might seem dramatic compared to maybe what you have on your list, but it's the same thing. It's the same thing that it's we're allowed to own it. We're allowed to dig into it. We're allowed to heal it. We're here to complete that circle. Diffuse the situation, heal it, come to peace with it, get unstuck from it. But if you dismiss it and don't give it any value, you're going to miss that window of healing, right? So forget about thinking you're a princess, first world problems. It's your problem. It's your life. It's your block. It's your future that is could potentially being stuck because of this. Own it, heal it, get through it. And you'll notice it's just when you validate your pain, when you own your pain, when you give yourself permission to be in pain, you'll just notice this sense of peace. It's this peacefulness. Yes, I feel bad. I feel angry. I feel guilt. feel frustration. I hate this. Don't be a hero. Don't be a warrior. Own it, open it up, heal it, and you'll see your life, you'll just show up different. You'll show up different. So, don't be the one who carries it all, because stuffing it all in invalidating it is not going to get you through it. So if this was helpful, I would love to hear from you. Please leave a comment. If you want more content like this, head over to Substack at neverlaunchonafriday.substack.com. I can't wait to see you in the comments, and I will talk to you soon.